Hey everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of the Scratch the Rock podcast presented by the Dude and Grimm Show and co-produced by Mr. IVEST. I am the Dude.
And I am Grimm, and today we are talking...
Holding it up.
You know I am. Apologies to the Queen Mary, the first full-length studio album by none other than Wolf Parade. Canada's own, mate.
Definitely Canada's own.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool, man. Yeah. Solid vinyl, I bet, huh? Just single disc?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I picked this up years ago, and it was one of those ones where this album was just something I really gravitated toward once I found out about it. And this is like early 2000s. I think, as the hipsters like to say, the early aughts. I think that sounds really weird, but in the early part of the turn of the century, there was a handful of things that came out at this. That, like, dude, it was around the same time Funeral came out. Like, there was just a lot of good indie stuff that kind of came out at this time, and this was one of those ones that always stuck with me and has been one of my favorites ever since.
Right. Well, I think their story is how they kind of formed and came together is interesting, and I think. I don't know. Do you remember how you discovered them? Because I know the thing that we always talked about was like Isaac Brock like discovered this band when he was like A&R for Sub Pop, and it was like, oh, well, if Isaac Brock likes it, it's got to be good, right?
Yeah. I think because around that time I was recording an EP for our friend Chad Lowy and his group at the time, Comlag. And I want to say Eric told me about this record, this album. Yeah. Eric Grimm told me about this record and that I should check it out. And so I did.
And Matt Vukas was also in that band.
Yep. But dude, I mean, to me, is like, as soon as the keyboard hits on You're a Runner and I'm My Father's Son, I'm kind of like,
ding,
yep,
ding.
This is the sort of thing I like.
Yeah, I remember you playing this for me, and I was like, I definitely like the sound of it, and that's probably around that time, like you just kind of said, like that's when I was getting more into Modest Mouse, and like you said, Funeral had just come out and everything, and that was kind of when I was getting, I guess, more into the indie rock scene, and probably starting to listen.
TV on the radio was TV on the radio. There was like a good
Built
time.
To Spill, Spoon,
Dr.
like a lot of these.
It was a good time for like
the indie
rock, I guess. If you will, the royal we.
I think it's really cool to look back at that time period now, because all those bands were really up and coming.
Oh, yeah.
Now they've been around for a while, and it's like,
Well, and Wolf Parade has since gone on hiatus and then come back. And I think they've come back and they've done 2 albums since they came back.
A couple
from hiatus. So.
Yeah, they've done a couple. I think they released something in 2020, but I could be wrong and probably am wrong. So they, it was interesting because they had come out. They have 3 self-titled EPs. Mm-hmm. Did you read that? Like that's pretty funny, man. So they came out with an album, Thin Mind, in January of 2020. Had one in 2017. Now there was a big gap between 2010 and 2017. So but this is their, I guess, 5th, or this is their first, but they have 5 full-length albums. Is
Expo 86 the last one before the break? I think probably.
Yes. Yeah. Expo 86 was 2010. Okay. Cry, Cry, Cry 2017. But actually, I was wrong. They have 4 self-titled EPs. One in 2003, one in 2004, one in 2005, and then one in 2016. They're like, you know what? It's been over 10 years since we've put out a self-titled EP. We're about due.
Yeah, exactly. I like that too, because they kind of went with the thing of like, how Fleetwood Mac has 2 albums called Fleetwood Mac. Now they're basically different bands, but they were just like, you know what? We'll do you one better.
Yeah.
We may not be making rumors, but we'll do we'll do you 4 better. Yeah.
Yeah. Suck it. Well, it was interesting when I was reading sort of about how this band formed.
Yeah.
Like basically it was, I think, Grenadine Records. They gave how do you say his last name? Spencer Krug?
Yeah.
I think about like Kruger National Park, Krug. Anyways, they were like, yeah, you have 3 weeks to form a band. And so, they pretty much started, they added one other person in, but they had only played once and rehearsed once before their first show. Like that's pretty incredible. Also, just to be that good of a musician, to be like, yeah, I guess we're just going to let's go out there and wing it. I mean, there's, like the MacGruber, right?
Yeah, sure. Well, there's a difference between wigging it and seeing what happens. We're going to see what happens.
We're going to see what happens. Absolutely.
Yeah, I know. And so Dan Bochner, now I think this is interesting and we should talk about this because very similar to listening to a band like the Beatles. Now the Beatles obviously have Harrison too, but it's more or less you can kind of tell whether it's a John song or a Paul song based on who's singing it, right? And sort of stylistically too. But I think the same applies in Wolf Parade with Spencer Krug and Dan Bochner because they have very different voices. And Dan Bochner's voice always reminded me if like Beck was in a rock band. Can you hear that? Is if you can you hear it as you think about it now?
Yeah, I could see that. I could definitely see that.
Like it's always had, and I can't describe what the quality is, but it's always had this quality that reminded me kind of if Beck was in more of a rock band.
Yeah. Well, and I would talk about Spencer a little bit because I would say he falls on the more unique vocal spectrum.
Absolutely.
In how
his voice is the one in I'm a runner and you're a runner and I'm my father's son.
Father's son. And I like it. I think it fits the music very well. I can definitely see it not being for everyone.
Yeah.
Like if some, like I can definitely see a handful of people being like, yeah, no, it sounds awesome, but I just, I can't get past, the vocals. I don't know if I've heard someone's vocals sound like that before. Like they're just so unbelievably unique. Yeah. Like there's just the sound, and I don't want to say it's like a whiny sound, but there's just this certain quality to it a little bit.
Now, have you heard any of his other he's got a spin-off project called Sunset Rubdown? And they put out a couple of pretty good albums. And I remember Stroh telling me about Sunset Rubdown. And they got a couple of good albums that are worth checking out. I will say.
Cool. Well, I will have. I mean, I'm definitely familiar with the name.
Oh okay,
sure.
But yeah, it's interesting because I guess they were and Bochner was in a band called Atlas Strategic, which I believe friend of the show Leifer told me about at one point around that time too. And I hadn't really listened to them, but I guess I was aware that they existed. If that means if that's worth a shit in any way,
it's an important part of the process.
Mm-hmm. Well, just like the Colonel,
yeah, just like the Colonel.
So
it's a real film, Jack.
So I guess Brock discovers them, and they go down to Portland and kind of record some songs. Yeah.
It was weird. This album seemed to. Now I couldn't fully understand all of how this album was constructed. I just felt like it wasn't written very clearly. But it sounds like they had a couple of EPs before they put this out, and it sounds like they used some of those songs on this album. Now, I don't know if they I didn't listen to the EPs, but
if they just cherry picked them or redid them.
Or they redid them.
I haven't listened to those either because it's like I was always a fan of this record. And then once Mount Zoomer came out, I mean, I had that one on CD too.
Okay.
Now, one thing that's interesting, and I don't know if it matters, but I'm interested now as I look at it. If one were to look at the cover art for this album on, say, a website like Wikipedia, they would see that down here it says Wolf Parade.
Yeah, right.
On this, it does not. It is just blank.
Huh.
So
trippy.
That's really neat.
Trippy.
I'm sure that everyone's really impressed by that.
They are very impressed. But yeah, back to the recording. I guess, Isaac Brock had kind of discovered him, and I think they had, I'm trying to think. They had some sort of connection. Like they'd been on, I don't know, a tour. Like he knew of them. I think it might have been one of the other members was like in another band, and they had opened up for Modest Mouse. So he was familiar, I think, with them as individuals. But yeah, essentially, Isaac Brock kind of, found him, and they went to Portland and basically spent, they said 2.5 weeks working 14-hour days. And I guess they said that would become another self-titled EP that they released in July of 2005.
Of course. At that point, you just need to keep following suit with that.
Well, it's interesting. So they come out with that as a self-titled EP. And then in September of 2005, though, is when they released this album, their first full-length album. And Isaac Brock produced some of the songs on the, I think there was only 3 or so that he actually didn't produce.
Oh, okay.
But there's a couple that there was definitely, and I'll point it out when we get there. I'm like, there's some definite Isaac Brock influence on this one.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Just some things that we know he likes to do, and the Modest Mouse material that they come up with. But dude, did you read about how they came up with the title for the album?
No,
Okay.
I mean, I feel like I did, but I'm not retaining it at this moment.
So there was an incident apparently where they were on an ocean liner called the Queen Mary. And they were actually, it says they were removed from the ocean liner because they broke down the door of a ballroom and were staging a violent seance. Seance? Yeah. And I was like, well, that's trippy. And first of all, I wasn't exactly 100% sure. I was like, wait a minute, what exactly is a seance? But
it's where you're supposed to like call up spirits and
a meeting at which people attempt to make contact with the dead, especially through the agency of a medium. So is that like a Ouija board or something? I mean, is it
a medium's a person that's supposed to like, dude, not like a fortune teller, but
gypsy and
but I guess maybe you just call them a medium, but like people who supposedly can connect to like your dead relatives.
Right.
I've watched a bunch of stuff on that. I can't say that I'm like 100%.
It's your thing.
Believe in it.
Yeah. But sometimes you do hear stuff and see stuff that makes you be like,
it's compelling. Yeah. Some of it is compelling for sure.
Yeah. But I just found that interesting. And what exactly, like, I would be curious to know, like, what was the violent part of it? Was it just the breaking down
in all
the door?
honesty,
Did they need to get in the ballroom that bad? Maybe.
To me, it kind of just sounds like a good story. I don't know. I wasn't there, but it just sounds like a good story because that's all you see of it.
Yeah.
So anyways, and what do you do to get removed from an ocean liner? Are they going to fly a helicopter out there? There's a lot of holes, or there's a lot of things that need to be filled in order to really give the story validity. Let's be honest.
It could have been before it left port. They could have.
That's true.
Maybe one of the stops along the way.
Yeah.
And they were like, we're good here. You guys, we're gonna go, and you guys just stay.
And why were they? And if they were all disjointed and eventually, I don't know. There's too many questions. Were they like, hey, we just became a band, let's go on a fucking cruise? I don't know. A lot of questions here.
A lot of questions.
But anyways.
A lot of questions. Well, I think it might be a good time to get into the tracks, my friend.
I was thinking the same thing, LD. And I'm sure we're going to talk about like who the writers were just because of the vocalists. And there's a very distinct sort of delineator there, even though there's the sound and kind of the feel, I think, carries over pretty well between stuff. So
yeah, no, it definitely does. Like the musicianship definitely.
Yeah.
It's not completely chopped up where it's like, wow, this song is obviously this person or this person. I don't feel that necessarily, maybe, but
yeah, and some of them tie together pretty well while others don't. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Ooh.
So number one, dude. right out of the gate.
You are a runner. I am my father's son.
I got a number on me. I got a number. Won't make it through a high noon sun.
This is, I've always loved this song, and maybe this is just like the first one I heard. And especially at that time in life when you're just like, you know, like I said, there was a lot of like indie bands and things coming out, and it's like, all right, well, let me give them a try. And it's like, I might, back in those days, well, maybe even still today, I might have been quick to sort of dismiss a band if I didn't like the first track or two. I'd be like, yeah, I don't know, next. That didn't happen. The whole like,
No,
I was like,
dude,
okay,
because it
yeah,
had
this is
edge
good.
to it, man. It had
Yeah.
grit. And dude, just I've always really liked that saying, or like, you are your father's son, or
son.
I am your father. You know,
Yeah.
It's sort of like a different way of saying the apple doesn't fall far from the tree,
far.
right?
Yeah.
To me, the title alone, I don't get the runner part, but I love the
Yeah.
and
yeah.
how he uses that bit in the vocals of the song.
Yeah.
Because the song gets like a little harder once he said, you're a runner with a stolen voice, you are a runner, and I am my father's son.
Yeah.
And then just kind of gets real nasty. And the way it ends too, it almost just like breaks up completely and like fizzles out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
dot matrix printer style.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's and for us being guys, maybe it's something we can sort of relate to, you know, where it's like the older you get, you're like, oh my God, I sound just like my dad.
Oh, yeah.
There's these characteristics that come out and you're just like, oh, like,
You can't help it. I mean,
even if you try like not to, right? You're
Yeah.
like, no, I'm not going to do that or be like that. And then you're like, shit, I kind of like that. I'm kind of like that.
Yeah.
You know? There's good qualities too. Dad,
Yeah.
if you're watching, there's good qualities too.
I know mine is.
So, but I also did think it was, what did he say about this track is essentially there was a certain way that his father was, and he didn't want to, you know, be like that or turn out like that. So for him, it seemed like I am my father's son was sort of a negative thing. But like we were just saying, he could see times where it's like, he was like that. So now, dude, then there isn't, I didn't recognize in this album a lot of kind of smooth or seamless transitions, this is one of them.
Yeah.
And it does go right into smoothly into Modern World. And it's cool because it starts off like real acoustic and everything.
I'm not in love with the modern world.
And the acoustic remains a pretty focal point of it throughout. And I love the riff that Bochner plays on it. I mean, it's a great song. I mean, the whole album is fantastic. That's why we're doing it. But
Exactly. We wouldn't be like, hey, we're going to pick a shitty album and talk about it for 45 minutes.
yeah.
I mean, people don't really, a lot of people don't watch the great albums. Why would you watch the shitty ones?
Yeah, sure.
Dude, you know who this song reminds me of? Dude, the Violent Femmes.
Interesting.
I
didn't think
when
about
I heard
that,
this,
but that is really interesting. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. In his voice in this one, I know I kind of said, what's his name kind of has maybe a whininess to it. This definitely has sort of that, like a little bit of whininess, the way the Violent Femmes
Beck.
are.
But if
like
Beck sang for the Violent Femmes.
Sure.
Hey, dude,
Exactly.
Modern World, I'm not pleased to meet you. You just bring me down. Like, there's a lot of great, and dude, my favorite line in the song is when he says it was a torch that drove the savages back to the trees. Like, that is such an awesome line.
Yeah.
That is a really good line.
We go to track number 3, Grounds for Divorce.
Steady the sound of the buses on the ground.
Now, this one, a Spencer Krug song too. This one,
Yes.
his voice is I don't know that I'd say abrasive, but uniqueness certainly comes out in the way he attacks it. And I will say, like, if you would have asked me when I first listened to this record, this would have been my scratch.
Interesting. Okay.
Now, it isn't now, but it took me a while to warm up to this song.
Okay. So one thing I noticed about this song, and it's one that Isaac Brock produced. If you listen to when they sing, "But Oh Darling is Dead," we hit it on the head.
Yep.
You can hear it
in the back,
way in the back.
Yeah,
And I was
hell,
just like,
it could have been him doing
it. Dude, it probably was. Like, it definitely could have been. I mean, it should have been.
Look like newlywed.
If I was making a song and Isaac Brock was producing it, or even like in the studio, I'd be like, dude, I just gonna need you to put this in, right?
Yeah, exactly. Listen, can you do like a solo where you kind of go?
Yeah, it's kind of like Garth in Wayne's World, where it's like
Yeah.
All right, track number 4. We built another world.
This is one he did not produce.
He did not produce this one. Yeah. But it's funny though, even though he didn't produce it, there are elements to it that actually do remind me of Modest Mouse. And how they sound. And maybe that was part of the attraction, you know.
I just love how it starts out with that, and then it comes, it just comes in pretty hard. But I like the synth bit about it too. It gives it a totally different feel.
It does. Yeah. And kind of like you said with that, the way it comes in, it does remind me. It reminds me of earlier Modest Mouse. Definitely the earlier stuff.
Well, because the drums, when
like
you,
long distance,
when you hear
Modest
those
Mouse
drum hits, it's not like this big expansive like. It's very dry. It's very like you're just, you know what I mean. But it gets the point across. But anyways,
yeah. And track number 5, let's get fancy with Fancy Claps. Now, this song was not from an EP. So it was and Isaac Bruce was a football player for the St. Louis Rams. Pretty good receiver. Yeah, he was. But Isaac Brock. I might have said Isaac Bruce before too.
I don't think he did, because I would have at least raised an eyebrow like The Rock did.
Yeah. If I say Isaac Bruce, I really mean Isaac Brock.
Yeah.
So, anyways, can't really like find and replace on these things.
Not yet.
But yeah, no, not yet. Yeah. But yeah, dude, it's got a good riff and like this fuzzy synth. And again, you were talking about sort of the drums and how they sound. Again, to me on this song, the drums do sound like an earlier Modest Mouse type.
Yeah,
sound.
they're dry. They don't sound like big, but I like that sometimes because I think in 90s rock is real guilty of this. They always just have this just huge, immense drum sound with all this echo, and it's great, but I don't want that in every song.
Yeah, I mean, now from like a recording perspective, to get sort of, are they miking? Do you think they're miking like each drum? Do you think like in the 90s, that's what they were doing? They were like miking each drum, or they were in some like big room to get that sort of punchier sound that this indie rock sort of has? Like, how would you go about setting that up, do you think?
Well, for one, usually when people are going to mic a drum set, there are going to be, it's not just going to be like room mics. Now you would have room mics for sure.
Yeah.
But you'd probably put one like at least on the snare. Maybe the toms would kind of share one. I mean, I'd like to mic everything individually.
Yeah.
But it's just as simple as once you have all that, you can make the drums sound that dry or as expansive as you want. It's just at that point, it's a matter of taste, really.
Okay. All right.
because that's probably more indicative of the sound of just the room they were in with whatever mic placement. Like, I would venture to say that sound is like room mics, just in the room as dead as possible.
Okay.
And then once everything hits, because you want the individual mics, because the room mics are great. You want the sound of like a drum set really is as you hear it. It's mixed together. But you also want those individual mics on there because, dude, when the kick drum hits, I want to feel that thump. And when the snare hits, right. I just want it. It's like a slap. You know what I mean? Like, and I want that slap.
Dude, slap. Love the slap.
Right in the mouth.
Track number 6. Same ghost every night.
When you're spread out on the map.
I'd say the first ballad on the album, if you will.
Yeah. I'll definitely go with that. His vocals are very like scratchy. Like, I mean, they kind of have that tone anyways, but like you actually hear them like break at some point. Like the way, and he's singing this drawn out sort of way. You know, when I was listening to this,
adds a lot to this one.
It does. When I was listening to this, and this goes back to the recording a little bit of, you know, how do you think, can you tell sort of how they recorded it? Like, do you think they were all sort of like in one room or?
Dude, that's really hard to say because anymore it's hard to tell because of just what you can do.
Yeah.
Sometimes it would sound like they were. And you know, they may have been, the like core members may have been present for whatever, right. for part of it, and then they just overdubbed the rest. And
right, okay, I was just curious if there was something that sort of stood out, like, because sometimes I feel like, you know, with certain bands you can definitely tell. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, all these guys are basically in the same room, just
like like with the Stones, dude. When you hear the intro to Can't You Hear Me Knocking? Yeah. You can hear that way in the background, you know?
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. Well, speaking of the Stones, Grimm, track number 7, Shine a Light.
Oh, yeah. Stones
songs of the same name. Now, which one do you have a preference? Which one do you prefer?
One? Fucking this one for sure.
Shine a Light on? Is that on Exile?
Yeah.
That's on Exile, right? Yeah. I thought it was.
You know, I do like that one, but dude, this Shine a Light, I've always liked that. This is such a good. So folks are born on summer buried alive. Just ding 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 ding.
Dude.
Ding, oh, it's great.
You know that intro with the ding, 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 ding? Dude, reminds me of the Beatles' Get Back so much in the beginning, the way the song starts, man. Like, initially when I was listening to it, I was about to just go into JoJo is.
That's funny. Shine a Light was always a highlight on this album for me. I don't know if I'd say it's my favorite, but it's a top 3-er for me.
Okay. All right.
Yep. And again, there is just such a good mix of electric guitar and synth. Like, I really like the balance that they strike between those two things. It's awesome. And it works. And, you know, I've said before that the synthesizer to me is always going on this proverbial line of being really cool or really cheese dick. And it doesn't take much to go one way or the other, right?
Yeah, it's a fine.
It is, but they always make it cool in what they walking
the line. Well, now we go, Grimm, to track number 8, Dear Sons and Daughters of Hungry Ghosts. One thing that stood out to me when I heard this song musically, I'm not talking about vocally, but musically, the song sounded a lot like something Elliott Smith would have done on like XO or XO XO or Figure Eight. There's something about the instrumentation and everything. And I don't know if it's it reminded me of parts of it reminded me.
What is it? At the beginning, that dissonance.
Maybe that's part of what it was. But there was something about it that I was like, wow, I could really hear like Elliott Smith singing over top of this.
Well, and even the lyrics, dude. What is it? I got a hand, so I got a fist, and I got a plan. Yeah. What is it? And then, but God doesn't always have the best goddamn plans, does he? Like that could be a Modest Mouse line too.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
That's a good one.
Could be. Yeah. He says, now we'll say it's in God's hands, but God doesn't always have the best goddamn plans, does he?
Yeah. That's really good.
That was pretty cool. Yeah. Track number 9, I'll Believe Anything.
Now, this is one I was going to mention that I think transitions really well because that synth starts to come in that you know, and it sets up what they're going to do in I'll Believe in Anything.
Yeah. So what I really like, this might be my favorite song on the album. I would say second favorite.
Shit. Okay.
Yeah, it might be my second favorite after You're a Runner. And so what I like about this, dude, it has some sort of like almost like the way he sings it has almost like an Irish or Scottish type feel. Like I feel like, dude, you could put bagpipes. You could put bagpipes over this.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
You know, like there's something about it. And then, dude, Give Me Your Eyes, I Need Sunshine. Like, dude, it's pretty cool, man. Like I really like the lyrics and some of that stuff. It just, dude, it builds up really nicely and gets really, really big.
Mm-hmm.
So,
dude, if we're just gonna unanimously say You Are a Runner is our favorite, which I have a hard time arguing with that.
Yeah.
I have to say this next one, It's a Curse, is definitely my second favorite. Now, what I like about it is they use, let me show you. They use the natural harmonics of the guitar.
Okay.
So.
All right.
You know, he comes in and I haven't. But they use those harmonics, right?
So you gotta go to that Led Zeppelin song.
But whatever, and I didn't beforehand figure it out. But I like how that he figures out the notes so that when he hits the harmonic, when he hits those harmonics, it sounds like dirty. It doesn't like when I play this, it sounds fairly clean. But with the root note of whatever the song's in, when he hits those come out like a diminished fifth or something really dirty. And they get on the tremolo.
And that's how we like it on the Scratch Track podcast. Dude. We like it dirty.
Yeah, we want to get nasty with it.
Yeah. So again, and I don't want to say because that they're taking anything from anyone, but for me, and maybe people who aren't familiar with this, so one of the reasons I was like, this sounds like Elliott Smith or this part or this part. So dude, this song to me it sounds like Spoon a little bit, musically and vocally, even the way Britt Daniels sings and sort of shout. He has that shouting raspy tone. Right?
I can appreciate that. I don't think Spoon is this nasty ever.
Yeah.
This is a little dirtier, but I do agree with you. Like I can hear how that would work, and I love the keyboard riff. How they kind of wrap it up that, like it's very chromatic and just kind of winds around and ends up at the root. I don't know. It's really good.
Gotta end up at the root. All right. Track number 11, Dinner Bells.
Another ballad.
Another ballad, longest song in the album. This one's at what, 7.5 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's definitely long. It's got this, it's weird. There's like sort of like this constant drum beat, and dude, it's almost like, I don't know if I want to call it experimental, but sort of like these erratic sort of just guitar sounds.
Like when he says "Maestro, where's the music?" and it goes.
Yeah. There's just some like weird things going on.
I've always liked that lyric. There'll be no more winter. There'll be no more spring. There'll be no more dinner bells left for you to ring. Like that's a man. That is great fucking writing.
That's really good. It is for sure. And then we're gonna wrap it up, Grimm, with track number 12. Oh. This Heart's on Fire.
Now, a Dan Bochner song, but to me, I think what really makes this song is that repetitive keyboard that Krug is playing. That and it almost like he doesn't change it on purpose because it builds the tension and release going against the other notes, which is brilliant.
The attack and release. For some reason when I was listening to this, I felt like it had like almost like a 90s feel or a 90s indie feel. I don't know what it was that stood out to me about it, but
hey man, sometimes we rock and roll, sometimes we stay at home.
Exactly. But the album, I feel like it ends in sort of like a little bit of an upbeat. Now the song starts off slower, but it feels, maybe there's some hope.
I think it's a good antithesis to the beginning, honestly. Like it really is. It's still like it still kicks ass and moves, but it's not as dark. It's a little, like you said, it's almost hopeful.
Kicks ass and takes names. Mm-hmm. All right, Grimm, it is time to scratch. I mean, we're both in agreement on our favorite songs. Second favorite songs, I believe I went with, what did I go with? I'll Believe in Anything. What was your, I guess?
It's a Curse, man.
It's Curse. Okay.
Third one is Shine a Light. Love Shine a Light.
Yeah. All right. Now who's scratching?
I feel like, did I pick this one? I think so. All right, if I picked it, I'll scratch.
I like that. That's fair. What do you got? Grimm?
I think if I had to, I would scratch The Same Ghost Every Night. When
spread out on the map. Ooh, okay.
Not because I dislike it, but I mean, that part of the album is just moving in such good motion where if I went from Fancy Claps into Shine a Light, I don't think I would be upset. Now, like I said, upon first hearing the album, I definitely would have scratched Grounds for Divorce, but I have changed my tune.
Yeah, Same Ghost Every Night. Also, it's pretty long. It's almost 6 minutes. We're at 5:45. I'm pretty much coming in, so I can definitely see where you're kind of ready to move on, especially if Shine a Light's like one of your top songs. Sometimes you just want to get there.
Where does it flip?
Yeah, where does it flip?
Oh, it flips after Shine a Light.
Okay, so you get 7 songs on side 1 and 1, 2, and then what? Five songs on side. Yeah. Side 2.
But I mean, shit, Dinner Bells being 7:34.
That makes sense. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and scratch Dinner Bells, man. It's just.
Oh, okay. Yeah, makes sense.
It's 7.5 minutes. It doesn't. It's a slower, more somber song. And it doesn't really change that. It doesn't. To me, the song doesn't evolve. There's not a lot of transition or anything. And I'm just for a 7-minute song, I kind of want it to go somewhere and do something. That's just kind of where I'm at. Like, here's the thing. Like, I feel like the song could have also been 3 minutes, and I would have been okay with that. Like I wouldn't be like, oh man, they should have really extended this one a couple more minutes,
Yeah. I understand. All right. Well, I'm not throwing out anything for that. You didn't either. So that's what we would call a fair scratch.
A fair scratch. But
so let us know after you go ahead and do the thing below.
Like, subscribe,
what your
below.
fair scratch would be.
Yeah. Also, have you guys ever heard of this band before? Like,
my God, I hope so.
It's one of those things though where there's bands like this though that they've been around for a while and they've been making music for a while, right? And these members have been in other bands, but I wouldn't say that they're certainly not at the level of some of I guess where I put my other favorite indie bands.
Well, dude, it's crazy. Like I was talking to my man Mac the other day, and I said, like, dude, did you get into the Apologies from Queen Mary? And he was like, oh no, I picked them up at like Mount Zoomer. And I'm like, and you never thought to go back and see what the first one was like?
Jeez. Who are these people you're hanging out with, man?
That almost deserves a what the fuck is that shit?
All right, Grimm, I think that's going to wrap it up here. Let us know below if you guys like this album, if you're going to listen to it now, what's your favorite track, and what track would you guys scratch off if you had to?
Like, subscribe, and comment below.
On that note, it is time to go on the TD
Grimm Show. Scratch the Track is produced by the Dude and Grimm. Additional music provided by Moore and the Tins. Copyright 2023, The Dude and Grimm Show.